The wind screamed across the Wyoming plains, cutting through the dark like a living thing. Snow whirled in maddened circles, swallowing fences, roads, and even the moonlight itself. It was the kind of night no soul should have been out in, except for one. Lila staggered through the endless white, her coat torn, shoes soaked, and fingers turning the shade of twilight. Her breath came out in shattered clouds, every inhale slicing her chest like glass. She didn't even remember how long she had been walking. Hours, maybe. Days, possibly. Her body had stopped keeping time. The car that had brought her here, the same one that had left her on this frozen road, was long gone. She remembered begging them to stop. The man had smirked, his breath reeking of alcohol and betrayal. "You said you had nowhere to go, sweetheart," he had said, shoving her out into the storm. "Now you do." And then he drove away, the red taillights disappearing like dying embers into the snow. Now Lila was alone. Her tears had frozen on her cheeks. The road was gone. The world was just white, cruel, endless white. She stumbled once more, and the snow caught her like cold arms. The sky turned darker. The world tilted sideways. Then nothing. Miles away, a man named Ethan Cole was finishing his rounds. His ranch stretched across the valley like an old story, fences leaning with age, barns glowing faintly under snow-heavy roofs, and horses huddled close for warmth. Ethan was a man of few words and quiet strength, the kind that life had sanded down and tested over time. He adjusted his hat against the wind and scanned the horizon. The storm was thick tonight. His instincts, the same instincts that kept his cattle safe and his fences standing, told him something wasn't right. He climbed onto his truck, headlights slicing through the swirling white. A half-mile down the road, he saw something strange, not moving, barely a shape. He slowed. The light revealed the outline of a person, a small one, crumpled beside the ditch. "God Almighty," he muttered, slamming the brakes. He ran out into the storm, boots crunching through deep snow. The figure wasn't moving. He knelt, brushing ice from her face, and his breath caught. She was just a girl, young, pale as the snow itself. Her lips were blue. Her hands, so small, clutched at nothing. "Hey, hey, can you hear me?" he said, shaking her shoulder. No response. He pressed his ear to her mouth. Faint breath. Still alive. Without hesitation, he shrugged off his heavy coat, a thick wool-lined rancher's jacket, and wrapped it around her trembling body. He lifted her carefully, feeling how light she was, almost weightless. "You're safe now," he whispered, more to himself than her. "I got you." He carried her to the truck, laid her on the passenger seat, and turned the heater on full. She didn't stir. Snow melted from her hair, her lashes, her fingers. He drove faster than he had in years, his heart pounding harder than the engine. Back at the ranch, the fire roared to life in the old stone fireplace. Ethan laid her gently on the couch, wrapping her in blankets. He fetched warm water, then placed a hand on her forehead, cold as death. He'd seen frostbite before, but this girl, she was young, fragile. He didn't even know her name. "S'mon, kid," he muttered, rubbing her hands to bring warmth back. "Stay with me." After a while, a soft cough. Her eyes fluttered open. She blinked against the light, confusion filling her gaze. Where am I?" she whispered. "My ranch," Ethan said gently. "Found you out by Miller Road. You were half buried in the snow." She tried to sit up, but the world spun. I was walking. I didn't know where to go. Don't worry about that right now. You need rest." Her lips trembled. They left me out there." Ethan froze. "Who did?" She shook her head weakly. "Doesn't matter anymore." A tear slid down her cheek, but even that tear seemed to freeze before it could fall. Ethan didn't press further. He just stirred the fire and brought her a mug of hot soup. "Drink this, you'll feel better." She stared at the steaming cup as if it was something sacred. Her hands shook as she lifted it. "Why'd you help me?" He paused at the question. "Because that's what decent people do," said simply. "No one deserves to be left to die in the snow." Something in his tone, calm, grounded, protective, made her chest tighten. It had been so long since anyone had spoken to her that way, with kindness, with care. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cabin there was warmth. Firelight flickered over the walls, over the rancher's worn hands and the girl's fragile hope. Ethan gave her his old flannel shirt to wear, then sat across from her, silent for a long time. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Lila," she said softly. He nodded. "I'm Ethan." She managed a small, tired smile. "Thank you, Ethan." He gave a nod back, but deep down, something in him stirred. He'd been living alone for years, ever since the accident that took his wife. His world had been empty, just horses, fences, and silence. But now there was someone here, someone who had survived something terrible. As she drifted to sleep by the fire, Ethan stood by the window, watching the snowfall. The world outside was still cruel, but tonight one life had been saved. And somehow he felt that hers wasn't the only one. Morning came slow and pale over the Wyoming hills. The storm had passed, but it left the land blanketed in white silence. The world outside looked peaceful, but inside Ethan's old ranch house, the air was heavy with question. Layla stirred on the couch, the blanket slipping from her shoulders. The crackle of fire filled the room. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory rushed back. The snow, the car, the darkness, and then warmth, a voice saying, "You're safe now." Her eyes found him, Ethan, standing by the window with a mug of coffee, the morning light catching the rough edges of his face. He looked like someone carved out of the land itself, solid and steady, but with eyes that had seen too much loss. "You're awake," he said, setting his mug down. "How you feeling?" Leela sat up slowly, pulling the blanket close. "Warm, thanks to you." Ethan gave a small nod. "You had mild frostbite. Another hour out there and, well, you wouldn't have made it." She looked into the fire, her voice trembling. "I wasn't sure I wanted to." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Don't say that." "I'm serious," she whispered. "Nobody cares where I go. Nobody would have missed me." He crouched beside her, meeting her eyes. "I don't know what happened to you, Lila, but I can tell you this. Life's got a mean way of pushing people to the edge. You can't let it shove you off. You fight back, always." Something about the way he said it, low, certain, made her throat tighten. For the first time in a long time, she felt like someone actually believed she could survive. Ethan stood, poured her some coffee, and set out toast and eggs. "Eat. You'll need your strength. We'll figure out what to do next." She nodded faintly. You mean I can stay here? For now," he said, "till you're back on your feet." Lila ate slowly, her hands still shaking. She watched him move around the kitchen. Everything about him was calm, deliberate. The world outside was ice, but this house felt like another world. After breakfast, Ethan threw on his coat. "I've got to check on the herd. Stay by the fire. You'll be safe." Safe. The word still felt foreign to her. When the door closed behind him, silence crept in again. Leela looked around the room. Pictures on the mantel. A woman smiling beside Ethan. A little girl holding a horse's reins. Her chest ached. He'd had a family once. Outside, Ethan trudged through the snow, wind biting his face, but his mind wasn't on the cattle. It was on the girl lying by his fire, the way she'd looked half dead in his arms. The hopeless sound in her voice this morning. He'd seen that look before, years ago in the mirror. Back then, when the accident took his wife and daughter, he'd almost given up too. The only thing that had kept him breathing was this land, something to take care of, something that still needed him. Maybe Leela needed that too. When he returned hours later, Lila was sitting by the fire, holding the photo frame of his wife and child. She looked guilty when he entered. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I shouldn't have." "It's okay," he interrupted softly. "That was my wife, Sarah, and our daughter, Emily. They were beautiful," Leela said, setting the frame down carefully. "They were," Ethan said quietly. "Car crash, 3 winters ago." Lila swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, me too," he said. And for a long moment, the only sound was the fire. She looked up at him then. "You saved me, and I don't even know why." "I'm nobody," Ethan shook his head. "You're not nobody. You're someone who deserves a second chance." Tears welled in her eyes. "What if I don't know how to take it?" He smiled faintly. "Then I'll teach you." That night, Lila couldn't sleep. The wind outside had quieted, but the storm inside her mind hadn't. She thought about the man who had left her in the snow, the one who'd promised to love her, who'd turned cruel when she had nothing left to give. She thought about the streets she'd slept on before that, the people who passed her like she was invisible. And she thought about Ethan, the warmth in his voice, the way he'd carried her like she mattered. Something inside her began to thaw. When morning came, she got up early and tried to help. She fed the horses, clumsily at first, and slipped in the snow twice. Ethan chuckled from across the yard. Easy there. Horses don't need to see you proving you're tougher than them. She grinned, embarrassed but smiling for the first time in months. Guess I'm not exactly ranch material. You'll get there, he said, tossing her a pair of gloves. Everyone starts somewhere. The days began to fall into rhythm. She cleaned stalls, learned to ride, cooked meals. The color started returning to her cheeks. The ranch, once silent and heavy with loss, began to hum with life again. But one evening, as they sat by the fire, Ethan noticed her flinch at the sound of a truck passing on the distant road. Her hands went still. "Something wrong?" he asked. She hesitated. "It's nothing, Lila." She looked into the flames. "I think he might come looking for me." Ethan's expression hardened. "The one who left you out there?" She nodded, voice trembling. "He doesn't like when people leave him first." Ethan leaned forward, his tone quiet but firm. "If he comes here, no one's touching you. Not while I'm alive." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why do you care so much?" He looked at her, not as a stranger, but as someone who'd once been lost too. "Because someone should have done the same for my daughter. Because I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save you." Lila covered her mouth, sobbing softly. Ethan said nothing more, just sat beside her until the tears stopped. Outside, the stars burned cold above the snow. Inside, two broken souls began to heal, one from loss, one from cruelty. And though neither of them said it, they both knew something had already changed.